discussing the deity of the Messiah in the Tenach. This lesson, we're going to look at a couple of passages that deal primarily with the Messiah's birth. But in looking at these passages, we're not focusing on the birthplace of the Messiah, or even really the manner of his birth, but we're going to look at how these passages show the Messiah has to be God, and they just so happen to be passages that deal with his birth. What we've learned so far, by way of review, we looked at that there is a Jewish belief about the Messiah. Messiah means anointed one. The core Jewish belief about the Messiah is that he would be just a man. So one of the most important or most foundational understandings in the Jewish belief about the Messiah, according to their own teachings, is that he would be just a man, that he would not be God, which flies in the face of not only what Jesus taught, but it also goes directly in contradiction to what the Old Testament teaches about the coming Messiah. We have to understand these things in order to adequately be able to share this truth with a Jewish person. Jesus claimed to speak God's words and that he was one with God. He claimed to be the Messiah, and he claimed to be God. What we will learn in this lesson, numerous passages from the Hebrew Scriptures that show that the Messiah had to be God. 3 passages that detail the Messiah's birth. Now, as we go through this class, we're going to look at more passages, but in this lesson, we're going to look at 3 specific ones that deal with the Messiah's birth. The first one we're going to look at is Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 14. Now, a bunch of these passages that we're going to look at here in this lesson are very familiar with us about around the time of Christmas. We look at these passages because they deal with the Messiah's birth. But every one of these passages that we're going to look at here in this lesson also show that the Messiah had to be God. Interesting. Isaiah 7:14, the teaching of Emmanuel. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive, and shall bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, oftentimes, when we look at this passage, even in dealing with Jewish people, the focus is the virgin birth of the Messiah, that the Messiah would be prophesied to be born of a virgin. Not just a young woman, but a woman specifically that had not had yet physical relations with a man. This makes it a miracle. This makes it a sign that a virgin would conceive. But the name of the child that is going to be born is Emmanuel. Emmanuel means with us. Emmanuel, with us. El, God. This passage here in Isaiah chapter 7 teaches that the Messiah that was to be born of a virgin would be God with us. The book of Isaiah is filled with prophecies about the Messiah. Some of these are readily identifiable. Others are embedded in Isaiah's historical context. That is the way it is with all messianic prophecy and with prophecy in general, whether it appears in the Torah, the first 5 books, the writings, the books of history or poetry, and the prophets. The ancient rabbis found at least 16 messianic prophecies in chapters 7 to 12 of the book of Isaiah. Some of these are transparently messianic, meaning you can very easily, just on the surface, see that they are a messianic prophecy. Others are embedded in the context. All of these rabbinically acknowledged messianic references are part of the scriptural context for Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 14. What is this saying in a nutshell? Is that according to rabbinical teaching, primarily from the past, before Christians started to use these passages with any frequency in talking to a Jewish person, trying to explain to them that Jesus is the Messiah, he was born of a virgin, he was born in Bethlehem, and so on, before these passages of Scripture were viewed so defensively by Jewish people, the rabbis said, yeah, this is talking about the Messiah. Nowadays, the Jewish teaching and belief and current rabbinical interpretation as a knee-jerk reaction to Christian evangelism has gone on the other side to say, no, this isn't talking about the Messiah at all. And they do that with a number of different passages that are obviously talking about the Messiah. Throughout this lesson, we're going to look at a couple of different quotations from rabbis of old who didn't have this bias against Jesus, who didn't have this forced misinterpretation of Scripture in order to get the Christians off their back. When they look at the Scripture with an unbiased eye, many times they saw that this is talking about the Messiah. Of course it is. Nowadays they don't believe that, because if they would accept that, then it would point to Jesus. They considered this, speaking of the ancient rabbis, a very messianic portion. In fact, the only portion of Scripture in which the ancient rabbis found more messianic prophecies is Isaiah chapters 49 to 54. Isaiah 53 being right in the middle of that. Nowadays, you talk to a Jewish person about Isaiah 53, specifically a rabbi, and they'll say, no, that's not talking about the Messiah. It absolutely is. And it's a forced misinterpretation based on a knee-jerk reaction to Christians using Isaiah 53 to talk to Jewish people about Jesus. Okay, Isaiah 7:14, Emmanuel, the Messiah would be God with us. He would also be born of a virgin. The second passage we're going to look at in this lesson here is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Once again, a passage that is commonly viewed during Christmas time. Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6 and 7 says, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder." This child, this son, is going to be of the utmost importance. He is going to be, arguably, even just from this passage, the most important person ever born. The government shall be upon his shoulder. His name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God. This one, this son, this child that's going to be born, he's going to be called the Mighty God. The Everlasting Father. Both of those terms carry with them deity. Absolute deity. You can't get past it. The Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth even forever. If the Messiah is going to be just a man, he can't rule from the throne of David forever. He can't. This Messiah is more than just a man. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Now, here's an ancient rabbinical quotation from a commentary on Deuteronomy chapter 2. Rabbi Samuel, the son of Nachman, said, when Esau met Jacob, he said unto him, My brother Jacob, let us walk together in this world. Jacob replied, Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant. And then they give Genesis 33:14 in quotations, speaking of Jacob and Esau. What is the meaning of I pray thee pass over? Jacob said unto him, I have yet to supply the Messiah, of whom it is said, Unto us a child is born. And so in this commentary on Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 4, this ancient rabbinical commentary, they have kind of a hypothetical situation between Jacob and Esau. And in this conversation, Jacob says, I pray thee, pass over. What is the meaning of I pray thee, pass over in this rabbinical discussion? Jacob said unto him, I have yet to supply in this hypothetical situation here. I pray thee, pass over, Jacob said unto him, I have yet to supply the Messiah, of whom it is said unto us, a child is born. So the whole reason that I'm showing you this passage, this commentary on this event in Genesis 33 and in Deuteronomy chapter 2 and verse 4, is this hypothetical comment that is given by the rabbi from Jacob. He's saying, Jacob said, I have to supply yet the Messiah, of whom it is written unto us a child is born. So the whole point of why I'm showing you this passage from this ancient rabbinical commentary is the fact that they acknowledged that Isaiah 9:6, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. They acknowledged in this commentary that Isaiah 9:6 and 7 is referring to the Messiah. The Messiah. He would be the mighty God. He would be the everlasting Father. He would rule from the throne of David forever. This cannot be just a man. The Talmud agrees that this passage, the Jewish commentary, the Talmud, agrees that this passage is speaking of the Messiah. The Messiah would be the mighty God, El Gibor in the Hebrew. Just like Emmanuel, El meaning God, the mighty God in the Hebrew is El Gibor, the God of might, the mighty God. The Messiah would be also the everlasting Father, Aviad. How can the Messiah be called the mighty God? How can the Messiah be called the everlasting Father if he's just a man? And the third and final passage we're going to look at in this lesson, dealing with the Messiah's birth, for the purpose of showing that the Messiah had to be God. Micah chapter 5 and verse 2. That the Messiah would be from of old, from everlasting. But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, speaking of Bethlehem and Judah, this little tiny place, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, the same ruler spoken of in Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6. He's going to come from Bethlehem, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. Interesting. So there is one who is going to be born in Bethlehem. Typically, when we think of a birth, we think of an origin. My origin is Euclid, Ohio. That's where I was born. This one, this ruler that's being spoken of here, although his birth is in Bethlehem, he'll come forth out of Bethlehem. His actual origin, which is what the word goings forth means, his origin is from of old, from everlasting. So this Messiah, this ruler that is to be born in Bethlehem, his origin is not in Bethlehem. His origin is from forever past. Another Jewish commentary, Targum Jonathan, on Micah 5:1 in the Tenach, which is in our English Bibles Micah 5:2, agrees that this passage is speaking of the Messiah. This quotation here is from the Talmud, Barakot 5a, again, from a Jewish commentary. The King Messiah, from where does he come forth? From the royal city in Bethlehem, in Judah. Now, if you remember from our previous lesson when we talked about the popular Jewish thought and teaching about the Messiah, it's mentioned that in every generation, there's a person with the potential to become the Messiah. There's a belief in Judaism nowadays that basically anybody from anywhere can be the Messiah. There is a teaching among the ultra-Orthodox Jews, a teaching and belief that a man who has since passed away, Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the belief that he is the Messiah. He was born in the Ukraine, and he died in Brooklyn of natural causes. And so what the Jewish people are doing is they are willingly ignorant of what the Scripture teaches about the Messiah. They want to believe what they want to believe about the Messiah, rather than what the Bible actually teaches, rather than what the Hebrew Scriptures actually teach. Because what the Hebrew Scriptures actually teach is that the Messiah has to be God. He is God with us. He is the mighty God. He is the everlasting Father. He is from eternity past. None of those things can possibly refer to somebody that's just a man. The Messiah would be from eternity past. So far, we've only viewed 3 passages from the Hebrew Scriptures that show that the Messiah would be God. We've looked at Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14, that the Messiah would be God with us. We've looked at Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6 and 7, that the Messiah would be the mighty God, the everlasting Father, that he would rule from the throne of David forever. We also looked at Micah 5:2. Not only teaches that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, but the Messiah would be from eternity past. Just in these 3 little passages that deal with the birth of the Messiah, we can see such evidence that the Messiah has to be God. Next class, in our next lesson, we'll look at 2 passages that deal with the Messiah's sonship, being the Son of God, and 2 passages that deal with the Messiah's being, who the Messiah is at his core. And these passages will show us beyond the shadow of a doubt that the Messiah has to be God, and if the Messiah is not God, then he's not the Messiah of the Bible. He's not the Messiah of the Hebrew Scriptures. And so being able to share this with the Jewish person is of the utmost importance in our efforts to show them the gospel. Next class, we'll look at some more passages. Shalom.